Welcome in. It's the after show, the show after the show. It's literally the show that we got to do because we just didn't have enough time to get to everything that we wanted to get to these days. It is never a shortage of things in the news. There's never a shortage of things to talk about. And boy, oh boy, today is one of those days. In fact, we got some phone calls left over. We'll try and get to those. If you ever want to call me on the after show, feel free. That number is open. 616-774-2424. After we're live here, you can still call in and talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about on the after show. We continue to also give you the chance to text in and interact immediately, if not sooner. If you can't get through on the phone, sometimes this works really well. That number is 616-201-3353. 616-201-3353. The governor is busted in hot water. That's the story today. In fact, there's a headline, there's a story that hasn't been really talked about on the news. You got to ask your local news provider. Wait a minute. Where are you guys with this? There was a story that just kind of fizzled a while back and it didn't get a lot of play. That, thankfully, is getting a little bit of play today because folks, well, there's still some real reporters left. One, Charlie LaDuff, out of the east side of the state. He keeps digging, and I love Charlie because he doesn't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. He wants to get down to the truth, and he's been instrumental throughout this thing. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. We'll get down to the bottom of it. I did share earlier today on the show, and I'll share maybe a couple more here, but the victims highlighted, victimsofwhitmer.com is the website. Stories of people who have really been through the ringer in the last year. One man's story, Richard Silver, took his own life. He was a Purple Heart recipient. The PTSD, the stress of the last year, the lockdowns, the shutdowns, as his son writes, were just too much for him. I encourage you to look at those stories so that folks like Richard and the many others that we lost last year, maybe lost their lives or lost their businesses, lost family members, that those stories don't go untold, that they're stories that people do get to hear. They're not silenced by, of course, the official big corporate media narrative. Want to make sure that we hear those stories. So coming up, we'll shine a light on some of those here in just a minute. Don was holding on the phone throughout the program, and Don, I always appreciate hearing from you. Sorry we didn't get a chance to get to you. As we said, an hour just never enough. But if you're streaming right now, you're streaming on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or anywhere else, maybe even my website, justinbarclay.com. We appreciate you being here with us today. Don, what can I do for you, brother?
Well, I wanted to mention the hypocrisy of these Democrats, but first I couldn't let this go by. You had talked about the award that Big Gretsch got for showing bravery, face of the China virus. And I had heard on Newsmax last night they were talking about it, and they said the voting was really tight, but she had edged out Cuomo from New York and Newsom from California, and she's going to be invited to go to Washington and get her award from President Kamala Harris in the future. So I just picture that Kamala coming out with her mask on and her favorite pantsuit, giving Big Gretsch his award. But anyways, I don't know. But
yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, I was just saying, isn't that something? This award that she's supposed to get is just incredible. JFK and the way they worded it. Her profile and courage, and that she risked her life and her health last year. I thought to myself, you're kidding me. This has to be a joke. This has to be one of these onion things or the Babylon Bee or something.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis probably finished about 47th in the voting. So, the best governor in the country. But the hypocrisy of these hate American Democrats, you do a great job pointing out what hypocrites they are. Like I said, I watch Newsmax. They pointed out. I watch some Fox News still. They pointed out. But to me, it just bounces off the back of these Democrats. They could care less about getting called a hypocrite. I mean, You got to remember, these people, they lie, they cheat, they're atheists.
Yeah.
I mean, they believe in executing little babies. I mean, calling them a hypocrite means nothing to them. It'd be impossible to do, but a good solution would be to lock every one of them into a room for a day with a Bible and an American flag, and that'd be enough punishment for them that they might change a little bit. But I don't know. Let me know what you think on Justin, okay?
Appreciate it, Don. Thanks for calling in, my friend, as always.
Okay, thanks.
A pleasure. Okay. Yeah, I love to hear from folks like Don, and of course, folks like you as well. Again, if you want to, sometimes you can get through on the phones. If not, we do have that text message. You can get through on the text, and I'll give you that number here in a second. I'm actually just sending one out right now to let people know that we're on the after show. Somebody asked me about this the other day, and that was great. It was at the rally on Saturday at the Deltaplex, and somebody said, I thought you had people, because I sent out a message that said, I'm up here by the bridge. If anybody wants to come say hi, I'd love to meet you. And somebody said, well, I thought you had people to do that stuff for you. I said, no, it's right here on my phone. It's me. It's always me. So if you send a message, I 9 times out of 10 get to see them. I skim through everything. So if I get a chance to read everything, I do a lot of times try to reply to them as well. So right now I'm just typing out, we're live with the after show here. Come on over. So come on over. So I'm sending it out right now. Boom. Now it's going out to all the folks who get the text messages. There you go. You heard it. You heard it come through. There it is. Very cool. So that number, if you want to get through, is 616-201-3353. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to send something over. But if you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever else, go ahead and leave your comment. I see that in the comment stream over here too. So always appreciate those as well. The story that I wanted to start with, Mike said, just got my text. That's right. And that it's crazy how that works, but the technology they got these days. And that's what we're doing. We're building the lifeboats, guys. So please get the good news letter, justinbarclay.com/good news. Get the text, sign up, because no matter what happens, Facebook can try and censor us, Twitter. I mean, we've been down these roads. And it's happening to everybody. So no matter what happens, we're going to try and be able to stay in touch with each other so that we continue these conversations and can get the word out about the things that matter most. Here is the story that I knew, this is probably not going to get a lot of cover, and there's reason for that. It's because it's the truth. That's basically it. But Charlie LaDuff is an investigative reporter. We've had him on the program before, worked with him for a little bit. Well, not really with him, but I guess did some with him in Detroit when I was on the other side of the state. The guy is a bulldog. He's one of the most entertaining, but one of the also most informative individuals that I've ever had the pleasure of reading. And now the guy is a Pulitzer Prize New York Times writer at one point. The guy knows his stuff. Here's what he writes. LaDuff, Whitmer mooches billionaire's plane as father makes miraculous recovery. So you remember the story a while back? This was the governor headed down to Florida. She got caught, and they didn't want to tell anybody about what was happening, and her staff came out and said, it's partisan politics. That's all this is. We're not going to answer to this. Well, no, it turns out there's more to this story, because what happened is she got caught telling people not to travel for spring break down to Florida. And as Don was mentioning about hypocrites, they don't care whether they be called hypocrites or not. They really don't care. They're above all of us, so it doesn't matter. But boy, oh boy, there's more to this story, and I just find it fascinating because nobody was doing the digging. Maybe they ask a question during one of those press conferences. If we're lucky, maybe we get an answer. Maybe. Charlie did some digging. He went even deeper. And he says here, when Governor Gretchen Whitmer was out last month for a secretive trip to Florida in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, her office claimed Michigan taxpayers did not foot the bill. So the question is really, who did, right? Who did? How long was she there? Why was she there? And why do these things matter? Because she was telling everybody else not to travel while she was traveling herself. Charlie goes on to say, what they did not tell us, however, is that Whitmer asked a wealthy group of Detroit businessmen to provide a private plane they share. Those businessmen have major dealings in and with the state of Michigan. The quote, "We wondered why she reached out to us instead of booking a private charter," said one of the plane's owners, who exchanged his candor for confidentiality. You can't tell a governor no. Who needs that kind of trouble? Had Whitmer booked a round-trip flight from Lansing to West Palm Beach through a private charter company, it would likely have cost $10,000 to $20,000 or a whopping $40,000 for the actual jet she took, according to private jet websites. The latter is more than 25% of the governor's salary before taxes. It's unclear whether Whitmer reimbursed the company, Air Eagle, which manages the aircraft owned by the businessman, and if so, at what price and from which bank account? She said she was going to see her sick daddy, but that's not a legit political expenditure, said Adolph Mongo of Detroit, a political consultant. What it is a political favor. She asked, she got on their plane. Now she owes them one. Whitmer's office did not respond to those questions. The governor spent 4 days in Florida, not 2, as her handlers insist. And she was not vaccinated. She flew on the businessman's Gulfstream G280 twin jet. And if you're streaming now, you can see the picture of this jet. Beautiful, beautiful piece of machinery. It was cold and clear on that morning of March 12th when she lifted off from Lansing, and then it was warm and sunny when she touched down in West Palm Beach at 9:37 a.m. By the way, I've been there. Gorgeous. Beautiful. It's right down the road there from Trump and Mar-a-Lago. No, she wasn't visiting him. She was visiting her dad. The federal flight records reveal all of this, by the way, that Charlie goes on to say. She left West Palm Beach on Monday, March 15th at 4:37 p.m. She touched down at 7:01 p.m. in Lansing. We have the federal flight records. She was there 4 days, not 2, like she said. What else has she been lying about? Unfortunately, it looks like that list is endless. 2 weeks after returning, Whitmer instructed Michiganders to stay away from Florida because of a raging UK COVID variant there. Top health officials went away while COVID was surging in Michigan. Yes, the director of the Department of Health and Human Services and her COO both went to Florida and hit the beaches respectively. Whitmer and her staff have refused to provide any details of the Florida trip, citing ongoing concerns. In fact, in a statement, they don't even mention Florida, only that she left the state, quote, to assist her elderly father who is battling a chronic illness. And like I said previously, I don't begrudge her the trip to be able to do that. I think everyone ought to be able to be with their elderly parents or their family members, whoever it might be, when they need to be. But if she's going to tell people to do one thing and do another, then she needs to open up this entire state and quit playing politics. Quit the hypocrisy. How many of us in Michigan lost loved ones, weren't able to attend funerals? How many of us weren't able to see our loved ones in nursing homes and care facilities? Weren't able to be there with us. We had a baby through this thing, and the hospitals wouldn't allow, as our baby was at 72 days in the NICU, born 3 months early. My wife's parents and her sister, the sister she's very close with, they're twins, never got to see the child until we came out of the hospital. Each of us at some point has been affected by this. Rules for thee, but not for me, apparently is her slogan and model. Well, that didn't work too well for Newsom, and it hasn't worked too well for Cuomo. Somebody needs to hold this governor accountable, and I'm glad Charlie's doing it. The article out of DeadlineDetroit.com, and Charlie LaDuff writes, to this day, Whitmer and her staff have refused to provide any details Governor Whitmer lied about her trip to Florida and is compounding her lies by refusing to disclose the cost of the private plane she used, if she paid for her personal trip, and what the fair market value of the payment was. Jason Rowe, executive director with the Michigan Republican Party, said in a statement, she ran a campaign based on transparency, her so-called Sunshine Plan, but has been the most opaque governor in Michigan history. I guess by sunshine, she meant the Sunshine State, he said. Whitmer's office did not reach out to the Florida official or state police to inform them of her arrival, which is customary security protocol, Deadline Detroit has learned. As for Dick Whitmer, who was described in a press release as chronically ill and in failing health, and thus the reason for her trip to Florida, Dick appears to have made a miraculous comeback. Great Lakes News, a website that is often critical of Whitmer and is also reported statewide radio network, mentioned last week that her father was seen in the parking lot of a Lansing area mall getting out of a brand new Tesla. I'm looking. I don't see pictures. But boy, oh boy. I mean, does anything you anymore? Does anything surprise you anymore? There she is, busted again and again. She is going to be receiving the award from the JFK Foundation for risking her life during the pandemic. Oh, have mercy. Wow. Wow. There it is. Governor Whitmer busted. Now, is any of this going to matter? You and I know about it, but unless you click share on that thing that you're watching right now or listening to us on, whether it's the Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, the new platform that we're gearing up with, as you know, we're testing that out, live streaming on it right now. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go over to stream me on Rumble. You go to justinbarclay.com/Rumble to get there and click subscribe. But if you're watching these things, click share with other people so that you can share this story, and not just on your Facebook page or your Twitter or whatever, but send it out to people as well so that they can see these. And also our podcast, wherever you get your podcast, the iHeartRadio app, just search for West Michigan Live with Justin Barclay and you'll find it. But story after story continues to come out, and I talked earlier about Richard and this horrific story. Share this website with other people too, because I don't think people are hearing these stories. Sure, they know it's kind of tough and they've been through some things, but they don't know the full extent. You know, stories like this man, veteran, Purple Heart recipient, Richard Silver, who unfortunately took his own life during the pandemic because the lockdowns were just too much. There is a prayer meeting today on the steps of the Capitol in Lansing, and I would recommend, if you can't make it, to join these folks in spirit. But they are praying on the steps at the Capitol today. They're going to be having a fish fry afterwards as well. But you can go in person if you like. They say rain or shine, it's happening. We talked with Pastor Rick Warswick about it this morning. As a matter of fact, we asked him to pray on the show because people are asking always, hey, what can I do? What can we do? I know these things are bad, but what can we do? Is there anything we can do to help fight the fight? And one of the things that I recommend, because it's true, I just don't think that people give it enough credit, though. You can pray, and I encourage you to do so. I think we should all pray today. In fact, here I'll give you the update here. Here's the flyer if you want to see it. They start today at 11 a.m. on the steps, the Michigan Capitol. They go from 11 to 1. And if you want to join, you can bring lawn chairs and whatnot. You may want to bring an umbrella. I don't know what the weather looks like. We've seen chance of this rain throughout. So here's another story that I think I'll dig into a little bit more tomorrow, but I want to make sure that you know about it because it's a story you're probably not going to hear anywhere else. You're always hearing from people who want to talk about the election issues, and you're from maybe lawmakers, or you hear from folks in the news when they say, there's nothing to see here. You just don't think it. I just can't add up. I look at Biden and all of the craziness, and you wonder, especially with his, the way he kind of just can't keep a thought together. The way he sort of stumbles through speaking now. The way he really doesn't know where he is 9 times out of 10, it feels like. And you look at these things and you wonder yourself, how did this guy get 80 million votes? Have you ever wondered that? You ever thought to yourself, how is this possible? Well, quietly the other day, census numbers came out of the 2020 census. And we heard stories about states losing, like Michigan, people moving out of the state of Michigan. We're going to lose a House rep. People moving to Florida, Texas, some of those others, the free states. But there is a story that I think I said I'll probably spend a little more time on tomorrow. But the census reveals weird anomaly. This is from electionwiz.com. Shows millions less voted in 2020 election than official tally. Now, here's what you're saying. Wait a minute. What are you saying? What does this mean? Well, here's what this means. U.S. Census data released last week called into question the official vote tally from 2020. As part of the census, the government collects data on citizens who self-report as having voted in presidential elections. The collected data shows an unusual anomaly in the reported results. What are the possible reasons for this? According to the census, the recorded number of people voting in 2020 was tallied at 154,628,000. On the other hand, official results placed the number of actual ballots cast slightly north of 158 million. It's about a 5 million vote difference. They say 4 and change, but let me just put this in perspective for you. The census said only 154,628,000 people voted, but the actual number of votes on record is 4 million more. Where did they come from? Speaking to pollster Richard Barris during an episode of Inside the Numbers, lawyer Robert Burns said historically the census tends to pin on the nose the recorded vote numbers with the actual results. In other words, often the two data sets reasonably match. Barnes is right. For example, the Bureau was nearly spot on in 2008, slightly underreporting that 131,100,000 voted, while official results showed 131,300,000 ballots cast. So they were only off by 200,000. Very close, right? Of course, sometimes the census has missed the mark, but for decades in almost every case where the census grossly botched the results, it was because the Bureau over-recorded the number of those who voted versus the actual ballots cast. Considering the following, in 1992, the census over-recorded the official results by slightly more than 9 million. In 1996, the census again over-recorded the number of reported voters by roughly 9 million. Similarly, the Bureau recorded the number of those who voted in the 2004 election as 125 million, while official results placed the total at 122 million. On and on, again and again, and I'll put a link up to this article in our show notes. If you go to woodradio.com, you'll be able to see it all. But isn't that something? And I don't know if it's a smoking gun. I'm sure they will find reasons to say why they can't. This can't be. But it sure is a head scratcher, isn't it? Imagine that. The numbers don't add up. Nothing to see here. We did talk with folks out of Antrim County, the latest in that lawsuit. If you haven't heard or you haven't seen, They've added folks like the Secretary of the State here in Michigan to that lawsuit. They have found some very interesting things that they've been able to document, some things that many of the machine companies say you can't do or shouldn't be able to do. They've been able to document that they were able to do. DePerno Law, Matt DePerno. Go check out his website. You'll be able to see the latest on that. Lots to talk about today. Lots we didn't completely have time for, but boy, oh boy, I am thankful for every minute of it. I'm so glad we get a chance to be here with us. Tell somebody about, of course, the full show, West Michigan Live, 9 to 10 on Wood Radio, and make sure you share the after show as well. There's never enough time, but we do our best to make sure that you are informed so you can know what's going on. We know the news isn't going to do that. We can't depend on anybody for that anymore. It's our turn to step up. Folks, I appreciate you being here again. Make sure you get the good newsletter. Go to justinbarclay.com/good news and let's stay in touch no matter what happens. You saw yesterday the president banned for good off of Facebook, at least for the next 6 months or so. And that decision looks like they're leaning toward forever. We'll continue to update you with that story as well, but you just never know. That's why we're building the lifeboats. Thanks for being here with you. Wish you the best. Back tomorrow morning at 9:06 live on News Radio with 1300 and 106.9 FM. Make it a great day.